Yes, no questions in the present tense for all verbs except the verb be.
We call these yes/no questions because usually we answer them with yes or no. Um, Now, there are other words that we can use to answer them in the affirmative and negative. For example, instead of yes, sometimes people will say yeah, sometimes people will say okay, sometimes people will say uh-huh, sure. So we don't always answer the affirmative with yes. We do use some other words and phrases. This is also true for no. When we want to answer in the negative, we sometimes answer no, but we have other variations that indicate negative. Some Americans say nah, some say nope, some say we call them yes no questions, but basically they are intended to elicit an affirmative or a negative response. Now, of course, sometimes with certain questions, it's not possible uh, or you should not answer yes or no. If someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer, then instead of saying yes or no, we say, I don't know, or I don't remember, or I'm not sure. So, in addition to answering affirmative and negative, we sometimes indicate if we don't know the answer, or we don't remember it, or if we're not sure of the answer there. And we call them yes no questions to identify this type of question, but sometimes we, in fact, do answer them not in affirmative, not in negative, but with something else indicating that for some reason we cannot answer in affirmative or negative, or we don't want to answer in the affirmative or negative. Yes no questions are questions that we usually answer yes or no. The word order for yes no questions with the simple present tense um, is different than the word order in sentences that are not questions. In yes no questions, we begin with the auxiliary do or does, again, depending on the subject, if the subject is third person singular or not third person singular. So we get do or does, then we get the subject, then we get the main verb, and the rest of the question. So we have this particular word order that is used to identify questions in English. Again, do or does depends on the subject, but in this case the subject will be coming after the auxiliary do or does. So we get do or does, subject, main verb, rest. Okay. As with the negative, it's important to remember that here do and does, do or does, they are really empty words. The only thing that do or does uh, tell you is that it's present tense. Their position tells you that it's a question, but you cannot, in most cases, these words cannot be translated because they really are empty words. So one has to get accustomed to using these words because of their grammatical function, their role in the syntax of English. On this slide, you can see a comparison, or really a contrast, between the yes-no question word order and an unemphatic statement word order. In the yes-no question, we need the auxiliary do or does since we have a verb that's not the verb be. In the statement word order, we don't have do or does. Also notice that since the does in the yes-no question has the suffix, the verb in the yes-no question is like. But in the statement, because we don't have does, the suffix is put on the verb like, so we get likes.
Short answers to yes no questions. When someone is asked a yes no question, it is understood that they are supposed to reply in the affirmative or the negative. So they can say yes or no. They might also say, I don't know, if they cannot say yes or no. In addition to saying yes, other ways to indicate affirmative are things like uh huh, yeah. In addition to no, people will sometimes say nope. So there are different ways to indicate affirmative or negative responses. If the person simply answers by saying yes or no, or or that's what I call a super short answer, the minimum. In a short answer, what I call a short answer, in addition to indicating affirmative or negative, a little bit more. And we do this because, in general, it sounds a little bit more friendly than just saying one word. If you just say one word, it may give the impression that you don't want to talk to the other person. Now, of course, there are other ways to answer. In addition to the super short and the short answers, which I am going to explain here, you could give a longer answer. So if you look at the first one, do you live in Carolina? You could say yes. You could say yes, I do. Or you could say yes, I live in Carolina. So there are different ways that you can answer depending on the situation you're in. Okay? In the negative, you might answer no, no, I do not. No, I do not live in Carolina. Or you might say no, I live in, and then say the name of the place where you live. So you might indicate that your response is negative and you might give the information as to where you live. So again, there are different ways that you can answer these. I'm just going to focus on what I call and what other people call short answers. In the short answer, as I mentioned, we begin with an affirmative or negative, a yes or a no. And then we use usually a pronoun. So if someone says, "Do you live in Carolina?" When you answer, you say "I," because you're talking about yourself. Yes, I, and then we put "do" in the affirmative. In the negative, we would get "No, I do not." Now, you can also use a contraction. So "No, I don't." "No, I do not." "No, I don't." Does the sun rise in the east? Yes, it does. Because the sun is a thing, we use the pronoun it. And because it's third person, we get does. So yes, it does. No, it does not. No, it doesn't. Hopefully the person will say yes, it does. Hopefully they know that it does. Does Nancy like English? Yes, she does. She, because Nancy is feminine, so we get yes, she does, or negative, no, she does not, or no, she doesn't. Do we have a test today? Yes, we do. No, we do not. No, we don't. Do you work in the same building? Obviously, there you is referring to more than one person. So in the response, we get yes, we do, or no, we do not. So sometimes you might refer to one person, but sometimes it may refer to more than one person. So you have to be aware of the context. And the final example. Do Pete and Sarah exercise often? Pete and Sarah, two people, plural. So yes, they do, or no, they do not. So here you have examples of what are called typical short answers to yes no questions.